An abandoned cabin, a haunted record, and the ghost of a drowned jazz singer, Ellen's search for proof becomes a fight for her life as the music never stops, and neither does the terror. Ellen pushed open the door to the old lakeside cabin, her flashlight cutting through the thick dust that hung in the air. The locals had warned her about this place. It had been abandoned since the 1920s after Margaret Pike, a jazz singer, mysteriously disappeared. Rumor had it that Margaret's spirit lingered, and her music still played from an old record player in the dead of night. Ellen didn't believe in ghosts. As a paranormal investigator, she was used to debunking urban legends, and she was here to do the same, capture the proof or lack of it. The cabin was silent, save for the creaking of the floorboards beneath her boots. The only thing that stood out in the otherwise decrepit room was an antique record player on a small table, perfectly intact. Dust had settled over its surface, but the vinyl on the turntable caught her attention. The melody of shadows was etched faintly on the label. She set her camera on the table and leaned over the record player. "Let's see what all the fuss is about," she muttered, setting the needle on the record. The crackling of static filled the air, followed by a slow, mournful jazz melody. Ellen paused, surprised at how clear the sound was. The music was soft at first, almost hypnotic, but there was something unsettling about it, a coldness that seemed to seep into the room, making the temperature drop. She exhaled, watching as her breath fogged the air. Her instincts told her something wasn't right. She turned off the camera and approached the window. The lake outside was still, shrouded in a thick fog. She thought she saw a figure in the distance, but when she blinked, it was gone. The music from the record player grew louder, warping into a distorted tune that set her nerves on edge. Then she heard it. Footsteps, faint and deliberate, coming from upstairs. Her heart pounded. She hadn't seen any stairs when she entered, but now she heard the slow, rhythmic creaking of floorboards directly above her. Someone was walking. "No way," Ellen whispered, gripping her flashlight. She swept the beam across the room but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just the old furniture, the peeling wallpaper, and the record player, still playing that haunting tune. But the footsteps didn't stop. They were coming closer. Down the stairs she hadn't noticed before, behind her now. Ellen spun around, her pulse racing, and her light fell on a shadowy figure at the top of the staircase. A woman. Margaret Pike. Her eyes were dark, hollow pits, her skin pale and soaked, as if she had just crawled from the depths of the lake. Her once elegant dress clung to her thin frame, water dripping onto the floor. Margaret's lips moved as if she were singing, but no sound came out. Just the music, still playing from the record player, now deafening in its intensity. "You shouldn't have come," Margaret's voice rasped, barely more than a whisper, but it echoed in Ellen's mind like a scream. Ellen backed away, her feet stumbling over the uneven floor. She reached out for the door, but it slammed shut on its own, trapping her inside. Margaret drifted closer, her eyes never leaving Ellen's. Panicked, Ellen dashed toward the record player. She tore the needle from the vinyl, but the music didn't stop. It grew louder, more chaotic, the notes twisting and distorting until they were nothing more than a nightmare of sound. Margaret's cold, wet hand clamped down on Ellen's wrist, freezing her in place. The icy chill spread through her body, making her limbs numb. Ellen gasped, her breath hitching as the world around her seemed to darken. "You're mine now," Margaret whispered, her voice like the wind off the lake. Her grip tightened, pulling Ellen toward her, toward the shadows that seemed to swell and consume the room. Ellen's vision blurred, her strength fading as she felt herself slipping, sinking into the cold darkness. The last thing she heard before everything went black was the haunting melody of the record, spinning endlessly, the music playing on without her. The next morning, when the locals came to investigate Ellen's disappearance, they found her camera lying beside the record player. The footage captured nothing but the empty room, and in the background, the melody of shadows played on repeat, filling the cabin with its ghostly tune. Some stories are just rumors, whispers in the hallways. But what happens when you become part of the legend? A girl, a cry, a haunting secret. This is the story of the fourth cubicle, a place where fear waits behind a door. Are you brave enough to listen? Share something that happened to me, something I still can't explain. It was my first year at Higashi High, a typical Japanese school with long corridors and classrooms that always seemed a little too quiet. The school had its quirks, rumors of strange happenings late at night, of doors opening by themselves, or distant voices when no one was around, but I never paid much attention. At least not until the day I made the mistake of using the fourth cubicle in the girls' restroom. I didn't know the story at first. I was new to the school, so when I found myself in the girls' bathroom that day, I didn't realize that the fourth cubicle was the one to avoid. Looking back, I wish someone had told me. It was a normal day. I had stayed late for study group and the school was nearly empty. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the windows. I felt the urge to use the bathroom before heading home, so I slipped into the girls' restroom near the science block. As I pushed the door open, I noticed something strange. The entire room felt unnaturally cold, as if someone had left a window wide open, but none were. Without thinking, I headed straight for the fourth cubicle. I had no reason to fear it back then. It was just a toilet. I slid the door closed behind me and settled down, eager to finish quickly and leave the eerie stillness behind. That's when I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible sound. A soft weeping, as if someone was crying right there in the bathroom with me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The crying grew louder, but it wasn't just any cry. It sounded like a girl, young, fragile, her sobs echoing off the tiled walls. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that maybe it was just the pipes or the wind playing tricks on me, but it didn't stop. Suddenly, the door of the cubicle next to mine creaked open on its own. I hadn't heard anyone come in. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to listen carefully, but the only thing I could hear was that soft weeping. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer. I quickly reached for the lock, desperate to get out. But before I could open the door, I heard something else, a faint knock on my cubicle door. It was soft at first, just a single tap, as if someone was testing to see if I was inside. Then it came again, harder this time, like someone was trying to push the door open. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen with fear. Suddenly, a low whisper came from the other side of the door. "Let me in." My heart raced. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't just fear now, it was terror. The crying intensified, and I could hear the sound of small hands scratching at the door, trying to pry it open. I pressed myself against the far wall of the cubicle, trying to make myself as small as possible, praying it would go away. Then, without warning, the sound stopped. Complete silence. I waited, holding my breath, listening for any sign of movement. Slowly, I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The bathroom was empty. No one was there. I bolted out of the stall, rushing to the sink to splash water on my face, trying to calm my nerves. My reflection stared back at me, pale and terrified. That's when I heard it again, a faint, distant cry, like a baby's wail, coming from the hallway outside. I didn't stay to investigate. I ran, sprinting down the corridors past empty classrooms and lockers until I burst through the front doors of the school, gasping for air. Later, when I told a classmate what had happened, they looked at me with wide eyes. That's when they told me the story. Years ago, a girl, no older than 16, had taken her own life in that very cubicle. She had been pregnant, nearly 6 months along, terrified that her parents would find out. She saw no way out and chose to end her life, both hers and her unborn child's, in the most tragic way possible. Since then, strange things had happened in that bathroom. Some students claimed to hear her crying, others swore they saw her walking the halls at night, cradling an invisible baby in her arms. The night guards had even reported seeing her wandering the school grounds, her uniform stained with blood. But the worst part? They said, if you use the fourth cubicle, you'll feel her presence. You might hear her cry, or worse, she'll try to open the door. And if you're unlucky, you'll hear the baby's cries too, a sound that stays with you long after you leave the school. I've never used that cubicle again, and I never stay late at school no matter what, because some things should just be left alone. To this day, the fourth cubicle in the girls' restroom at Higashi High remains untouched by most students. They avoid it, passing the story along to new students each year, warning them to never ever use it, because if you do, you might just hear that soft, heartbreaking cry and feel the ghostly hands of a girl who is too afraid to face the world. Thanks for diving into the shadows with us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the truth is scarier than fiction. Until next time, sleep tight if you can.